Hearing some words of wisdom right now from Peter Levine. He is the foremost expert on social movements. He actually wrote a book about it. You've heard it, a couple people refer to it today. And we would love to hear some reflections from Peter about what he's seeing in the country and what we've done here today. Peter?
Thank you. And thanks for still hanging in here. The good news is that you don't have to listen to me give a talk or show PowerPoint slides because I didn't prepare those because I wasn't asked to do so. So that's the good news. The bad news is you do have to listen to me for a little while because I was asked to reflect, I think, on social movements, but also on what I had observed during the day. So my little talk is based on some notes I took. So my first reflection, obviously, but this is an important one, is gratitude. Gratitude for the meeting. A lot of people keep thanking David and Debbie Lynn, which I share, but I do think it's a bigger team. So thanks to the whole Bridge Alliance. Thanks to you all for the work that you do every single day. That's the most important thing I have to say. But I will say some more stuff. So the other emotion I have, I guess, is one is gratitude. The other is anxiety. And I think this kind of meeting, at least in me, and I don't know if it's true for you too, provokes anxiety. I think, are we big enough? Are there enough of us? Do we represent enough people? Are we diverse enough? No, we're not diverse enough. So, and that's not a problem owned by the Bridge Alliance, but by the field, and we share it. Are we skillful, knowledgeable, experienced, smart enough? Are we unified enough? And because it feels in a meeting like this like we should be going out of the door with some kind of unity. And of course, we don't automatically agree, and there were wonderful conversations at the two tables I was privileged to be in that were about disagreement. I thought the axis of disagreement in the morning at my table was kind of institutionalists wanted to protect our Constitution and our press and our scientists and against all the corrosive forces, and then insurgents wanting to tear down those things because they never were very good. And that's an axis of disagreement. In the afternoon, there was some nice disagreement, I think, about where we stand on ideology. Are we trying to be all-inclusive, balanced? Are we trying to have a view that might be idiosyncratic and distinctive? So those are points of disagreement. So they make us anxious about unity. And of course, we're very anxious, at least maybe it's just me, but I think we're very anxious because the stakes are so high, the timetable is so tight with the Republic at such peril, and opportunities for this kind of gathering are so relatively scarce. It's not the only one, it's not the first one, but we don't get together that much because we can't afford it and we don't have the backbone for it, the infrastructural backbone for it. So we have to make good use of these times. So I think it might be useful to draw a little bit on what we do know about social movements. And actually, I just play expert on social movements on TV. I don't actually, on stages like this, I'm not really an expert on social movements, but I think we can glean some lessons from it. And when I am talking about social movements, I really have two kinds of social movements in mind. One is the social movement for healthy self-governance, to use the phrase for the Bridge Alliance, or for democracy, or for a better republic. So that would be the movement that you all are in. And the question is how to make this less of just a network or a field and give it the fizz of a movement. The other question is, so we have movements in America, and they have a lot of fizz. You might have heard of, Me Too, or Black Lives Matter, or the Tea Party. So the question there is, how can they act in ways, because they are acting, and their scale is much greater than the scale in this room. How can they act in ways that have collateral benefits for democracy and not collateral damage? They already have both, but how can they be even better for democracy? So I would say, to be effective, and this is based on my reading of other people's research, basically. It's a lit review. I would say, to be effective, movements need four things. Obviously, this is brutally simplified. They need scale. They need a lot of people. Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stephan find that of all the social movements they've tracked over 100 years around the world, no movement has failed if it has gotten 3.5% of a nation's population to be actively involved, taking steps like getting out on the streets. Everyone has succeeded. So that would be 11 million Americans. So you need scale. You also need depth. That is to say, you need to change the people in the movement. They need to become smarter, more sophisticated, better connected. One of my favorite quotes how can I have one favorite quote? But one of my favorite quotes from Martin Luther King is from Stride to Freedom, where he writes, "Human beings, with all their faults and strengths, constitute the mechanism of a social movement. They must make mistakes and learn from them, make more mistakes and learn anew. They must taste defeat as well as success and discover how to live with each. Time and action are the teachers." Time and action are the teachers. So a movement's got to create the action and give the time for people to deepen, become better. It has to have unity, and movements always demonstrate unity, even if they aren't unified. They always find ways to wear an armband, to have a hashtag, to wear a color, to have a chant, to sing a song, to demonstrate unity. But movements also need pluralism. They need a lot of different kinds of people. They need demographic, and particularly in this room, racial diversity more than is here, but they also need other kinds of diversity, including diversity of perspectives. They need insiders and outsiders. They need people with a pull in the system and people who are very much apart from the system. How you define pluralism, so I say pluralism, I like that because it just means difference. How you define it, I think, varies. I mean, it was a very good thing that the civil rights movement was led by African Americans, and it wasn't racially representative of the United States. The big six civil rights leaders were black men. That's good. But they were very plural, if you think about them. A union leader, a religious leader, a young guy, they were different. So you need pluralism. Now the problem is scale and depth are in tension. The bigger you get, the harder it is to have a big impact on people. The more impact you have on people, the harder it is to be big. And unity and pluralism are in tension. Get a lot of unity, it's very hard to have diversity of views. Have a lot of diversity of views walk in the room, it's very hard to have unity. If you need a mnemonic, scale, pluralism, unity, depth, that's SPUD. So we need SPUD. It's kind of high in carbos, but we need it. So, and you can think of it as two axes with these two tensions between scale and depth and unity and pluralism. I don't think we have SPUD. I don't think we have it in this room, and I don't think we actually have enough of it in America for any kind of institution or organization. Eric Liu and I did some on-the-record interviews with civic leaders, and I'll tell you about two. So Anna Galland was running Move On at the time. I don't know if she still is. And she pretty much said, I use my vocabulary, but this is her ideas, that Move On has scale, hundreds of thousands of members, and unity, but they can't deal with pluralism. So when there's a certain degree of disagreement, they drop an issue by rule, and they don't have depth. Being part of Move On doesn't change people. Scott Reed is the executive director of PICO, the faith-based community organizing group, and he said in his words, these are my words for what he said, they have depth, profound transformation in poor people who become active citizens, and unity, some plurality, especially because they're interfaith, but no scale. Tremendous resources invested over a long time, not dollars, but work, and they just can't get to scale. So SPUD is what we need. SPUD is what we need. Now, I'm actually going to end with just two thoughts, because I don't want this to seem daunting. I think we have some SPUD. We have some carbos here. We just need more. So two things about why I'm kind of optimistic. One is this movement, of course, is not the people in this room. These are representatives of the people in the room. The people you represent are much more numerous. How many members of...
Well, there's 3 million social media presence of all 90 Ridgeline votes.
Great. 3 million social media presences, but thousands of really active members of lots of these groups. So that gives us potentially scale. Now, I think it's very appropriate, very essential, actually, to have this kind of meeting where you bring the representatives together. I think when you do that, there are also limits to that. And so part of what we have to do as a field is figure out how to engage more profoundly with all the other people. There's limits of scale, just not enough people in this room. There's also limits built in other kinds of limits. So we talked in our table about diversity, field diversity. That's the table I was at. One dimension of that is age. This room is too old. But when you bring representatives of big organizations together, you always tilt older because it just takes a while to become the leader of an organization. So we can counteract that, but unless we're going to the grassroots, we're never going to get. And I think that's true also of racial diversity. So penultimate point. This is the second to last point. I just think we need to find ways to engage with the whole 3 million social media people, not just with these people in the group, in this room. I think everyone knows that. I'm just calling you to that. The other point is SPUD wins. So again, the finding that these movements have actually never failed if they've gotten to 3.5 million. So that means, to 3.5% of the population, which would be 11 million Americans. So that means there is a way to win. It can be done. It's been done before. That applies to us in this room. Also, it applies to all those other social movements that are out there that are fighting, because they would actually be better off if they could figure out how to achieve plurality and unity and scale and depth. And I think a lot of people in this room actually have some of the recipes that they need. For example, recipes for figuring out how to get your large, diverse group to have unity. If you want to do that within a social movement, what you actually need is deliberative and relational skills, which people in this room have. So I think we have a lot to offer to those social movements. And in fact, I'll just say my own work nowadays is mainly less focused on being part of a movement for better democracy and more focused on trying to be part of discussions in actual social movements, in regular old social movements that make them better for democracy. But we need both. We clearly need both the specialists on improving America, and American Republic, and the people who are fighting for particular causes. We need both. We need them to be in synergy. I think there's potential. I think you can feel the potential. So try not to be as anxious as I am. Try to be more enthusiastic, and let's go forth and do it. Thank you.